Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here. I know some of you, and then many of you are still new faces. So I will try to share with you some thoughts on how to use pre-registration practically, how to deal with it practically. There are a lot of questions around how to pre-register, how to use pre-registration. I will also try to convince you that it is a very practical tool for you, regardless of the methodology that you're working in or of the discipline that you're working in. So I'm very happy to be here on behalf of Norway's reproducibility network. And in our network, we collaborate with many institutions across Norway for increased transparency and reproducibility of research in Norway. And we are also a part of a global association of similar networks. So we are really happy that at some point we partnered up with Stiftelsen Dam to inform each other about the needs of researchers, the needs for education and training across Norway. So we have been developing and delivering these training events. So maybe some of you have participated in the previous course. We have delivered, that was last year in November, online on Zoom. Sigrid already mentioned the recording of this course, that it's available. How many of you have been there or recognize? Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, several of you. Okay, so those of you that haven't been there at this training event, you can review the recording to get a very detailed introduction to pre-registration and the guidance for how to do it with some practical demos on open science framework. But to sort of set the ground for what I would like to share with you today, I wanted to sort of motivate why we talk so much about pre-registration these days. And it's because there has been a lot of talk and discussion around credibility of research. And Sigrid has already mentioned some of the reasons for why there is so much discussion around that or debate. It basically boils down to 3 main reasons for why we are so preoccupied with that right now. And the first reason is that we are really not incentivized to publish negative or these boring findings where we don't find the difference between the groups, where we don't find the effect. They all end up in this file drawer that we mentioned before. We are also humans as researchers, and humans are biased. And we come into the research process with our beliefs and our experiences and our thoughts, and this sort of illusion that science is this objective process where we just look at the data and data will tell us what is actually out there is not really true. And we really need to reflect on that, and we really need to be very aware of what we're bringing into the research process as humans, as individual researchers with our own experiences. And then finally, there are different ways of doing research, right? Sometimes we have very specific hypotheses and prediction, and we want to sort of test that. And other times we explore. Both are equally important, and both are a part of this really important cycle of discovery that we have in research. The problem is when we're mixing them up. So the problem is when we are reporting exploratory analysis as if they were planned all the way from the start, or the other way around. So because of these 3 reasons, some researchers have suggested that actually we could solve some of these issues, or maybe even all of them, if we pre-registered our studies ahead of time. And this is not such a new idea. Actually, researchers already in the 60s were thinking like, okay, but how would we do it, right? Like, do I send myself a letter physically, and like the post stamp would speak to when this plan was actually developed and registered? Well, luckily now in the 21st century, we have digital platforms where we can do it, right? So we don't have to do it like this. So in the beginning of the 2000s, the way it started was that clinical trials were first recommended and then mandated to be registered. And this platform, clinicaltrials.gov, has been developed. And since then, all clinical trials have been put there, definitely in the US, and then it spread all over into the world. And then from then on, the concept of pre-registration has spread to many other disciplines. So right now on the Open Science Framework, that is probably the most famous platform with for pre-registration with the best functionalities for pre-registration. We see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pre-registered protocols across different fields, and this is just a snapshot, but if you keep scrolling down on their page, you will see more of them. So when I talk about pre-registration, just to be on the same page, we mean that specification of your research design, hypothesis, or research questions if you don't have specific hypothesis, and or analysis plan before you observe the outcomes of the study. And it typically takes this form of this frozen timestamp document on a platform like, for example, OSF platform. And there are lots of benefits to pre-registration. So we increase the transparency of research. Through that, maybe we also increase trust in our research from the public. We give more visibility to these studies that do not result in observed differences, in these positive results. We give more visibility to these research ideas and plans early in the process if we pre-register them publicly. And we make this distinction between what's planned and what's not planned very clear. So this is all very nice, right? And a lot of us, like, oh yeah, some people are already yawning because it's like, yeah, that's good for science, right? Maybe. I mean, those are nice ideals. But there are also some selfish benefits there. So there are also some things that are in there for you as a researcher. So of course, as researchers, we usually do want to show that we are transparent and that we do want people to trust our work, right? And especially for you who are building bridges between research and practice, right? To be able to show that those plans have been registered beforehand, nobody else who has stakes in these outcomes has been coming here and trying to manipulate the findings in any way. We are transparent about how we have done this research to safeguard our patients or the users of the research that we are delivering, right? But we're also pushed a little bit more to think more deeply about research design and plan analysis. And Sigrid has been sharing some thoughts on that in her register reports journey. I'm also, every time when I pre-register my studies, I'm really surprised to what extent I can actually plan so many things ahead of time, even in qualitative studies, even in studies with different types of data, or studies with existing data. I will be talking about it a little bit more. But sometimes we do need this extra push to be able to really develop a good research plan. And we can claim credit for our research ideas. When we pre-register, we put our name on that protocol. We get a DOI number, just like for an article. This is something that other people can cite. This is something we can put on our CV. This is something that we can show to others. Even though we're still in the research process, we can say, look, this is my plan. That's the study that I'm currently conducting. And through that, we can increase visibility of our research and maybe even these days actually be more competitive on the job market and for different grant applications. So again, this is all great, but how does it actually look in practice? And how does this tool can really give these certain benefits to you in practice? So whenever I talk about pre-registration in practice, I always say that there are 4 main steps to the whole process. And in all of these steps, you can sort of make pre-registration this practical tool for your research process. So I will walk you through some practical issues from start to finish. So when we pre-register, we usually first need to know what we will put in the pre-registration. What are the elements that should be there? And for that, it's really important to choose the right platform and the right template to pre-register. For those of you that are funded by Stiftelsen Dam, of course, many of you conduct clinical research, so clinicaltrials.gov or clinical trials register are relevant places to put your pre-registration, but also you are required to put your pre-registrations in DAM's own registry at Open Science Framework. So this is a very important thing to remember, and just to sort of demystify if you haven't done it yet. How many of you have already pre-registered? Several of you. Not all of you. So to demystify this process a little bit, this is how it will look now, also because OSF has changed a little bit in the last few weeks. When you go and click on Create New Registration on OSF. Really important to choose the right template that fits the type of study that you're conducting. And the OSF pre-registration that there on the list of templates is the sort of original template that OSF has created for hypothesis-driven quantitative research. And maybe some of you conduct these types of studies, but many of you conduct also other types of studies. For example, some of you do qualitative research. And many researchers wonder, is there any point in pre-registering qualitative research, or should I even do it? Is that an appropriate thing to do? Yes is the answer, and there are also some practical benefits that come with that for your practice as a researcher. So for qualitative research, there is always some sort of departure point, right? And some sort of prior beliefs and expectations and general research aims and general research questions. It's incredibly important to document there, also as a part of our sort of declaration of our positionality in this research as researchers, and also our reflexivity practice in qualitative research. You can also think more deeply about the theoretical framing and the research plan from the start. And again, sort of speaking to what we said here earlier, usually researchers are really surprised how much they actually can put on paper right before they start data collection. So they don't expect how much it is actually possible to plan ahead of time, even for these kinds of emerging designs or exploratory research. It's also a great opportunity to think through your credibility strategies. In qualitative research, it's really important to, for example, use triangulation or checking data by different researchers or analysts. In the template, you will see a lot of opportunities for that. And you can have a transparent version of a research log. So it's really nice to sort of have that first initial plan there, and then you can come back to that. So there has been fantastic work done to develop that template that is right now on Open Science Framework for qualitative research. A whole group of international qualitative researchers have come together, run a really solid Delphi study on that among many, many qualitative scholars. And if you're interested in this work, I encourage you to look at these articles. But if you're not interested in diving deeper into that, you can trust that the template that is there for you as a qualitative researcher for pre-registration is really solid. So, so that's for qualitative research. And then there are also many researchers here that work with secondary data, and there is a separate template for that. But then we very often also get that question, okay, but what's the point? If it's secondary data, I already have the data, what am I supposed to pre-register? I already explored the data, for example, or I already have knowledge of that data. How does it actually work? It is beneficial to still pre-register studies with existing data or with these secondary data, exactly to declare your prior knowledge of the data. A really important declaration from the start. It will also force you as a researcher to reflect on that. You can also have this clear analysis plan. It's very easy to get really lost when we work with large data sets and we just dive in and we explore and we look at different associations between different variables. And somewhere in the middle of this process, we almost lose track of our research question. So it's really nice to discipline ourselves to think about research questions from the start and to approach the existing data set with these questions and with a clear analysis plan. And then you can also make this clear distinction between what's planned and what were the sort of purely exploratory analysis. A few comments for this to work best. Ideally, you would do that before accessing the data in the first place. And then you can report the sort of date of access. Usually we have some sort of timestamp for the date of access when we have received the data. We can document that. But even if the data is already accessed, because maybe you work in a research group where this data is already present, right? But maybe you haven't seen the data. Maybe the data is being held by a data manager or administrator in your team, so you haven't seen the data, and you can declare that. Now, if you have seen some part of the data, so sometimes we see a subset of data when we work with existing data. If you've seen a subset of data, but as long as you haven't seen the full data set, it's completely fine to do that and to report what you have seen. And then if you have seen the whole data set, again, so important to declare your knowledge of that data. We have worked a bit on that in NORRN, or NORRN, as we would want to say in Norwegian. Together, we coupled up with some fantastic researchers from Norwegian Institute of Public Health, from FHI, to, first of all, gather some evidence on how much transparency there is in Norway in this kind of research with secondary data. Here, we were working with the MOBA data set that probably many of you know. But also, we have developed a sort of toy example and some recommendations for how to be maximally transparent if you do work with existing data. This also includes pre-registration. We have a very simple pre-registration example as a part of this article. So I really encourage you to take a look at the article if you would like to take a look at pre-registration. It's a very brief example, so it's not an extensive pre-registration. Again, it was supposed to be a toy example, but maybe it will give you a bit of a more concrete sense of how this could look. All right, so this is for the template, and this is one of maybe the most important steps to sort of realize what pre-registration will contain. And then during writing up, of course, very important to think through your research questions and hypotheses very carefully, to be really precise about different inclusion-exclusion criteria, missing data, handling outliers, to try out your methods and analysis in a pilot study, for example. If you run a pilot study, report that pilot study. So do not hide the fact that you run the pilot study. Really important to be also transparent about that and what went into the pilot study. But these sort of preliminary studies can really improve our plan for working with the main data, and think about different possible unexpected scenarios. And then you're probably finished and you're ready to register and timestamp. If you're funded by Stiftelse Dam, you need to make your pre-registration open to public right away. So what happens after that timestamp? Very often we pre-register, we put a timestamp on it, it's archived, it's out there, and then we're like, no, I was supposed to include this analysis. Or I talked to a researcher at a conference and they say, like, no, this other model is much better, or this other technique for analyzing data or interpreting data. Because even if your plan is the best in the world, it will probably need to change. I have never pre-registered and run a study without a need to change something. And pre-registration, the point is not to run everything according to plan. The point is to be transparent about what has changed and why So provide justifications for that. And this actually really reflects the research process as it is, as it always is, because it's always like that. We plan something, and then we put things in motion, and then some things have to change. What pre-registration gives us is to transparent log of that. And it's really funny because very often when I teach that to students, especially first-year students, they ask me, like, what's the point? Like, isn't this how things are done? Always? They're very surprised. Because to them, this is so obvious. Like, of course I declare my initial plan. And of course, and then I declare my changes and any deviations from that plan. So of course, this is how we should be working, and pre-registration is only a sort of documentation to that. But if you need to implement these changes, and you will have to, of course, one way of doing it is to declare it in the final manuscript. There is some really interesting work being done on how the best ways of declaring changes to pre-registration, so I really encourage you to take a look. In our MOBA article, we also give you an example of that. So how to declare changes as a sort of simple table. You can also declare the changes throughout the text of your manuscript, but this can be a very neat, organized way to do that. There's another way of doing that, and that is submitting an update on OSF if a substantial change needs to be introduced. For example, you haven't finished data collection just yet. Everything is still in the process, but you already know you will need to change something in the analysis plan. And then you can submit an update. There is a big update button on OSF after you pre-register. And the first thing you will get after that is a prompt for justification for the update, because you need to justify why you're submitting this update. And we want you to be transparent about that. And then you submit an update. Your original pre-registration will still be there. And then people can see the update, and the second update, the third update, if needed. So feel free to use that functionality. But of course, we want to minimize these changes as much as possible. So if you remember this slide from a few slides back, those are the sort of guiding principles of avoiding unnecessary changes, right? So thinking things through carefully, being precise, thinking through unexpected scenarios, running pilot studies. Another thing, and a very simple advice, is to not pre-register too early. So sometimes we get really excited and like, okay, I have everything figured out. I will just put it in a plan. I click on timestamp, and I put all the studies I want to run in the next 3 years. And then, of course, lots will change if we do it like that. So very often, I pre-register a day before my first data point is coming in, for example, right? Just to be sure that from now on, nothing will change in my plan. My first participant is coming. I'm not going to change my plan. It's also good to follow the rule of pre-registering specific studies or specific articles, right? So that one pre-registration corresponds to one main output, just like in a registered report, except that here pre-registration is not being peer-reviewed. So those are some practicalities to think about in terms of minimizing changes. All right, and wrapping up all that, just some final thoughts that, of course, your pre-registration might look very different from pre-registration of researchers in other fields or other approaches. This is why it's so important to think through what kind of template do you need to make the most out of that pre-registration so that it can actually really work for you as a tool in your own research project. And then it's really worth to look at some pre-registration examples. If you're not familiar with this practice, do go and see how people are pre-registering. What is a good pre-registration? There are lots of pre-registrations out there. Not all of them will be good. And think through what would be a good pre-register protocol for your study. And talk to your colleagues. Some of you raised their hands here. I wish I took a picture so that we know. Those who pre-registered before. Some of you didn't. Talk to each other about pre-registration practice and what are the sort of challenges on the way or opportunities. All right, so I hope that this was a good sort of introduction to what is there in for you when you're using pre-registration as a tool in your own research. And because many of you are already using it, and many of you, we've heard about really nice, transparent, and robust research happening here too. I wanted to use the opportunity to also let you know that we at the Norwegian Reproducibility Network are awarding an Open Science Prize. This is also thanks to the kind support from Stiftelsen Dam. And because we know that you who are funded by Stiftelsen Dam, you do practice a lot of open science. And so we wanted to give you this opportunity to be awarded and rewarded for that properly. So if you are an early career researcher, or in your lab or in your group you have early career researchers who deserve that prize, please let them know so that they can apply, or apply yourself. Deadline is 21st of November, so there is still some time. The application form is not too extensive. All right, so with that, thank you so much.